Today's event is co-sponsored by the 74. The Reinventing America's Schools project is housed at the Progressive Policy Institute and promotes a model of schools we call 21st century school systems, or systems that provide parents more choice and give schools more autonomy in return for more accountability. Our research shows that public school systems that do this produce the most rapid improvement in student performance. Today, we discuss a report I co-wrote with one of my panelists today, Dr. Kariga Rausch, entitled Untapped Expertise, HBCUs as Charter Authorizers. The report highlights the historical impact HBCUs played in shaping 21st century America, but more importantly, how they can shape the 21st century leaders in creating K-12 schools that meet the urgent needs of America's families and students. Before we introduce our panelists, I want to survey who's in the audience. So we're going to see a survey come up on the screen, and for those panelists who are joining me today to kind of get a better understanding of who's the audience, we want to sort of take your assessment of who's in this space. Now, if you're like me, I identify with more than one of these groups. So the question is, which group, particularly for this conversation, do you most identify with? As a parent, as an educator, as a funder, as a journalist, as an advocate, and or as a policy maker. And so we'll show that survey to our speakers. But in the meantime, I do want to give our first two speakers, and Dr. Gilbert is joining us shortly as well. And so I asked my speaker, Dr. Rausch, firstly to introduce himself and his organization.
Fantastic, Curtis. Very nice to be here with you and glad to be in dialogue and community about ways in which we can expand outstanding and excellent schools for kids and families. So my name is Kariga Rausch. I am the president and CEO of the National Association of Charter School Authorizers, or NACSA for short. We are a national nonprofit that works to make sure that charter schools are excellent for kids, families, and communities, and builds from the high aspirations that they have for their students. We do that by working with policymakers, by working with authorizers and others to make sure we've got the right policies and practices in place that allow for excellent schools to come to fruition for kids and their long-term well-being. And grateful for the opportunity to talk about ways in which the incredible work the HBCUs have been doing for generations now might be able to be expanded and impacted by getting involved in public school governance and oversight through the multiple ways they might get involved in authorizing. So, Curtis, grateful to be here. Thanks for the opportunity and looking forward to our discussion.
Outstanding. And thank you so much for joining us, Doc. I think a lot of folks are waiting to hear from what the report, but also what your organization is doing in this space. Dr. Evelyn Edney from Delaware State University, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone, and please forgive me for not having my screen on. I'm a big proponent of having my screen on, but I'm 7 days out of having surgery in my neck, and I don't want you to see me right now. But I'm so excited to be here today. Early college model is very near and dear to my heart. I'm the head of school at the Early College School located in beautiful downtown Dover, Delaware, on the inside of the historically Black college and university of Delaware State University. Excited to be here today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Edney. I appreciate you joining us, even as you're recovering. And so thank you so much. And last but not least, Dr. Gilbert, introduce yourself, please. I think you're on mute there, Doc.
Sorry about that. Hello, everyone. I'm Dina Gilbert. I am the director for the Morehouse Center for Excellence in Education and the chair for the education department here at Morehouse. It's a pleasure to be with you all today.
Thank you so much. And so those who are joining us, we have a star-studded panel here of folks who are actually doing the work and those who have a grand vision for this work. And so let's get started. I want to be honest with you guys. There are no silver bullets in education. If anyone is telling you there are, I think that they'd be fooling you. There's no Superman coming, and there are no heroes on the way to save the day. And for much of my professional life and the life of most of my panels, we've been searching for that great idea that will bring communities historically divided on the issue of school choice together. How do we bring those groups together? Much of my professional life, I've searched for that great idea, that idea bold enough to push us to challenge ourselves to think about the future in a new way. And a new way based off of the historical successes of those, particularly in the African American community, the community that is most affected by educational inequities in this country. And there is no institution more successful, both in the past and now, at training Black students in America than HBCUs. And so, Dr. Krieg, I want to start with you first. Why did you agree to co-write this paper, Untapped Expertise, HBCUs as Charter Authorizers? And why did you agree to place HBCUs at the center of this research and this paper?
Well, first, we wrote the paper because of you, Curtis, and your leadership in our space, for a long period of time, being an exceptionally effective advocate for more great schools, for kids who my grandmother affectionately refers to as melanin blessed. And so really was grateful to collaborate with you, the Progressive Policy Institute, Reinventing America Schools Project, on putting forth some ideas around how we can make sure that schools that we have are excellent for kids and families. There's no secret, as you've already identified, that contributing to the transformation and the reimagination of K-12 education is something that HBCUs have been doing for generations now, whether that's through diversifying teaching pipelines or cutting edge research, or many, many other ways that they are already making such a tremendous difference in the kind of educational opportunities kids and families are getting. We thought it would also be useful to describe some ways in which they can get involved in some of the most consequential decisions, that occur, particularly in the public charter space, around things that authorizers do, which are deciding who should be able to open up a new school. What are the academic and financial and operational expectations that those schools should achieve? What is the right kind of oversight, that should be provided that maximizes a school's freedom and flexibility to figure out what's necessary while still to be able to meet those high standards. And then ultimately, who should be able to have the privilege of continuing to serve kids and families. And so there are a lot of different ways that HBCU and their alumni, importantly, can get involved in this space of public school governance and oversight in authorizing. One way could be the institutions willing and interested to become authorizers. A lot of authorizing institutions have appointed boards that alumni, may really want to, engage in and be a part of. And other ways, including, becoming a staff member in an authorizing institution, et cetera. But I think the important part in the paper that we call out is that there are some barriers that exist to willing HBCUs interested in getting involved in this. And that's why a call to action from the paper is for state policymakers to create more pathways for willing HBCUs to get involved in this space that we think can be truly transformative for kids and families.
Thank you so much, and well said. I also want to recognize other organizations that have been talking about this, the UNCF, the Charter Collaborative, other groups that have really been at the forefront of highlighting HBCUs in the K-12 education space. Before I come to Dr. Gilbert, I do want to see the results of our poll to find out who's actually tapped in and joining us today. And so let me have my person pull this up. And so we actually have a tie between advocates and educators. And so you could see that we do have folks in the space who are at the K-12 space, presumably, who are trying to figure out how this particularly could impact them, but also those advocates who find themselves pushing policymakers for change. And so glad to see them in this space as well. I do want to come to you, Dr. Gilbert, and you did not give us a full sense of your bio, but throughout time, I will share with them how amazing you are and the work that you're doing at Morehouse. As the that Center for Excellent Education at Morehouse, where you are, we actually highlighted in the paper. We felt that it was worthy of recognition for all the work that you're doing, but also a model for other institutions. We'll also add that you are an alum of the Clark Atlanta University, where will they say, well, we'll find a way or make one, and so that is one that could have been a title of the paper. But why, as an alum and as someone who's working to drive HBCU education, why have HBCUs been so successful at educating Black students?
Yes, so first, let me thank you for calling out this kind of this ethos and spirit of Clark Atlanta University. Yes, we find a way or make one, and that's kind of embedded in the culture and history of HBCUs. And I think Black students are successful there because not only do we effectively educate our students and make sure that they have a home away from home, but our care for them goes beyond their academic and professional preparation. We also care about their personhood, their spirits, their well-being, their mind, body, and soul. Our traditions, our ceremonies, our celebrations, our rituals, they reflect and appreciate, the culture, the backgrounds, the experiences of our students. Our environments promote a sense of belonging. There's a brotherhood or sisterhood, and there are family relationships that exist within our HBCUs that will exist long beyond their matriculation. And so these non-academic elements of the HBCU experience help to contribute to the success of students while attending the institution, but it provides them with a professional network and a family that they will maintain, these, relationships and memories and, this mentorship and these deep roots long after they've left.
Thank you so much. And I think, your remarks, in addition to what Dr. Rausch has mentioned, this idea of community, this idea of the institution being a part of them even after they're gone, is one that we believe, and we highlight in the paper, could be a benefit, an asset for HBCUs who eventually decide to become authorizers. Dr. Edney, your early college, high school at Delaware State University was also highlighted in the paper. And so we really wanted to highlight again models of HBCUs and K-12, particularly in the space of charter schools, because of the success that schools like you have had. So in your opinion, why have HBCUs like Delaware State and others been so successful at educating Black students, both now and in the past?
I think I get to echo my fellow panelists' words. There's just something about it. I'm excited to be at Delaware State University. I actually attended the University of Delaware, a PWI, and when I came to Delaware State University, I just the feel of home is there, and I believe that that's something that we in our school really wanted to hit home with our own students as they're coming in they're high school students who are coming onto a college campus. They're nervous enough, but we want them to feel like Delaware State University is their home. They are Hornets, just like the bigger Hornets that are there sitting next to them while they're taking college classes. And the idea of the legacy of all of the alumni that are associated with Delaware State University. I mean, when you come to homecoming, you feel like you're coming home every single time, and there's just nothing like it. And we want our students to feel not only the rich academic rigor that goes on at the university, but also the culture, the traditions, and that sense of community that is there, all wrapped into a ball where we've got affordable, accessible college education for these students. And if they start in high school on a college campus, on an HBCU campus, they're going to finish. Because of the nurturing staff at the university. And as Dr. Gilbert mentioned, it's beyond that. It's not just when you graduate, it's now going to take you into your future. The way folks work with our students now as high school students, they then get to move into being a college student on the DSU campus, fully matriculated, receiving those same services. Most of our students stay right there at Delaware State University. When they can choose to go anywhere for college, they stay because it's home to them. And I think that's really the heart of the education that you receive at an HBCU.
Can I ask you to talk about, in a previous conversation, Dr. Edna, you mentioned that the work that you're doing is part of a longer history that dates back a generation ago at Delaware State. Can you just share with the audience what you shared with me about what you're doing now and how it stands on the work that Delaware State has been doing for generations?
Absolutely. I am a weird entity in Delaware in that I got to actually be the principal at a school called Howard High School of Technology. And Howard is named after the same Howard that founded Howard University, the same general. And that school was one of the Brown versus Board of Ed schools. It was the one case that came out of Delaware that was a part of the big case in the country that knocked over the landmark case of Brown versus Board of Ed. And when, you're in a school where every third person in Wilmington, Delaware's house went to Howard High School because that was the only school that Blacks could go to north of the canal in Delaware for a very long time. And then I leave there and go down to Dover, Delaware, and land at Delaware State University, to the only other place that students were allowed to go to high school as well. It really just made me feel like I was coming home in that way. Delaware State University they made it so that students who lived in the middle of Delaware and in the southern part of Delaware could come to Delaware State University and actually stay during the week to attend high school on the college campus in the 40s. And then, once Brown versus Board of Ed kind of came into the picture, the high school division at Delaware State University kind of went by the wayside in that way because students could go to school anywhere at that time. Well, they could go to school anywhere at that time, but sometimes it still wasn't always good. But they had a home at Delaware State University during that time frame. And then for years later, for me to come to the school where we've opened the high school division back up again, it made my heart sing because I feel so excited to be a part of that rich history that was already kind of established there so long ago. And so being able to bring in the next generation of Hornets in that way has been really great for me.
No, thank you so much. In my own testimony, the first HBCU I ever stepped foot on was Delaware State University. As a young person with the African Methodist Episcopal Church, AME Church, we had a summer Young People's Department YPD conference at Delaware State University. And also, I just want to honor Dr. Clarence Harris, who's an educator, alum of Delaware State University, a member of the Hall of Fame of Delaware State University, who was a mentor of mine and was my best friend's grandfather, who actually passed away this week. And so I want to recognize him, a great Hornet, a Hall of Famer, who for years mentored young people like me, was a middle school educator in Brunswick, New Jersey. So I definitely want to recognize Dr. Clarence Harris. The report that myself and Kariga co-wrote outlines 4 key ways we believe HBCUs can impact the future, just as they've done in the past. Firstly, we believe HBCUs can, as what we call, redesign public education. How do they do that? By overseeing and expanding quality public school options to improve outcomes for parents and students. And so, Kariga, for those who are not familiar, what is a charter authorizer, and what power does it have that can impact the number and the quality of public school options for parents and students?
Yeah, no, appreciate the question, good brother Valentine, and would answer that pretty succinctly, right? So, charter school authorizers are the ones that make some consequential decisions in kind of governance and oversight of charter schools, right? So they're the ones that evaluate applications, right, to say, right, who's good enough to open new schools. They set with the schools kind of academic, financial, operational expectations, and then make determinations on what kind of oversight, ensuring that schools have the right kinds of freedom and flexibility to meet those high standards and expectations, then who should be able to continue to serve kids and families. And that is a role that really ensures that charter schools are excellent. And that's, I think, the most important part of this that I don't want to get lost in our conversation, Curtis. And that is the North Star in this is academically excellent schools for all students. And the ideas that we're putting forward around HBCUs getting involved in charter schooling and kind of authorizing, it's a means to that end. But let's not miss the end here. And the end is academically excellent schools. And why HBCUs could be an important partner in this is their track record. As we've already discussed, there is a rich lineage and history around providing students that are not only academically prepared, but prepared to be world changers. And so I don't want for us to get too bogged down in some of the discussions without making it super clear that the ultimate goal here is excellent schools for all kids that prepare them for whatever is next for them. And we believe that HBCUs getting involved in authorizing, whether that's the institutions, their alumni, becoming authorizers or getting on authorizing boards or becoming staff members. We talk about all these kind of different options in the paper, to get involved because of that fundamental belief that people who have had was so good to be on this panel with Dr. Gilbert and Dr. Edney, talking about their experiences and things that they've done, that should give us even more confidence that highly talented people involved in those consequential decisions is a transformative approach to thinking differently about public education, and why state policymakers in a lot of places need to create more pathways for that to happen.
While you have the floor, I want to follow up. So here's a scenario, right? The Edney Gilbert College president wants to become a charter authorizer. What role would your organization, NACSA, play in supporting the president of the Edney Gilbert College for Excellence in becoming a quality authorizer and ensuring that they're providing quality schools for parents? What role does NACSA play, for those who don't know?
Yeah, sure. Appreciate the question. So we're certainly interested in working with HBCU institutions to figure out the right pathways, towards getting involved in this. Like I said, the paper outlines a few of those. One is the institutions themselves becoming an authorizer. And we would first work to make sure that state policymakers enable those kind of pathways. But then we'd work really closely with the institution to think about, what would this mean, engaging stakeholders. Thinking through, how does this enhance our university's mission and approach? How can we, really help to also sustain ourselves as institutions, How can we think about ways in which we can partner, with schools that we're engaged in many, many different ways? So there are a lot of pathways, but certainly my organization stands firmly ready to work with not only state policymakers in making, those pathways available, but HBCU leaders that are in exploring what it could mean for them and their alumni to make a difference in public school governance and oversight.
No, thank you. I would only add, I'm a former charter school authorizer as a member of my school board for 10 years. But your organization also sits at the nexus of what's working, what authorizers are doing well, and that could benefit these potentially HBCU authorizers to understand what has worked, what are lessons learned, and what are the best practices. Dr. Edney, your school is already providing students and families in Delaware a quality public school option. Talk about what parents say about your school, and why is your school's connection to HBCUs so impactful? How was your school different if it wasn't connected to an HBCU?
In every open house I do where I'm, talking about our school and what it has to offer, inevitably every adult in the room says, man, I wish I had something like this when I was coming up. Every single one of them, hands down, some person in the audience will say that to me. And I get it, because I literally would have been the student who would have benefited from something like this as I was coming up. There was nothing like this, no, not even dual enrollment. At the very most, you had an AP experience, you know, and when I'm sitting at these open houses and I say to the parents, there's a big difference between an AP program and dual enrollment that takes place in most in a lot of the high schools in this country, and what we have to offer. You will never find anything for 200 miles around us that allows for our students to be able to take free college classes, because Delaware State University pays for our students' tuition to go there. And then early college, we pay for their books and any kind of lab fees and things of that nature. So it is free. It's a free public charter school. And so why shouldn't everything inside of it be free? And that's probably the beauty of the system and it being a charter. Our school is authorized by the Department of Education here in Delaware. But of course, Delaware State University was, you know, they were the ones who sat down in the beginning to say, hey, we think this would be a really great idea. And even before that, one of our senators, Senator Carper, Thomas Carper, was sitting at something in Ohio and he saw some type of an early college program there. And he came back to talk to the then president of Delaware State University, Dr. Harry Williams, who's over at the Marshall Foundation now. But he came back to tell him about this, and that was kind of the seed that got it all going. And when they sat down with a group to kind of organize and write this application to go to the Department of Education, you know, they had to put in it all of the wonderful things that early college programs have to offer out there. And one of the biggest things, and really the heart of the model, is the power of place. This doesn't work if you're sitting in a high school setting and some adjunct who just happens to be one of the high school English teachers at that high school are teaching a group of high school students sitting in a high school setting. It means way more to the students and their parents if the students are sitting next to bearded people taking college classes on a college campus with a college professor teaching the college curriculum. It means the world to our students when they become what we call college ready, to be able to go out there and take those college courses. And we've created a whole system and way of life of this college readiness in our school. And the parents have bought into it because we have to educate them on it. Not all of our parents a lot of our students are first generation students, but we have a huge portion of our students who are actually alumni students, alumni, Delaware State University alumni students, or their children come to our school. That is one of our preferences as a charter school. We could list as a preference for our application. We want to have Delaware State University alumni kids in our building. And so that really helps to kind of solidify the whole HBCU family piece to it all. Being able to have our employees, Delaware State University's employees, students, and the alumni be able to come to our school and be put up on a waiting list to get into our school. So they get higher up on the list and be able to get into the school, because we wanted to make sure that was a part of that whole HBCU experience with our students.
Thank you, Dr. Eddie. I learned something just now. And this idea of being able to prioritize alums of your institution is so impactful. Maintain that tradition and exposure, but also getting those students exposure to the, as we call it, the yard sooner than later, because that's actually a draw for a lot of students. Dr. Gilbert, again, you know, I'm gonna tease out your bio because you're so modest. You are a former executive director of a charter school network, a very successful one at that. And you're a leader of a program at Morehouse that is a destination for students from 50 states in the country. Like, Morehouse is pulling from every state in the union. And so you and I have talked about this offline. Like, how could an HBCU authorizer impact the increase, the founding of quality school options for families? How could an HBCU authorizer impact a pipeline? I mean, what can an HBCU authorizer do in a state like Georgia to impact K-12 education?
Yes, before I answer, let me share this as a disclaimer, because what's not successful right now is my Wi-Fi. So if I lose you during my answer, I'll come right back in. But yes, I am the very proud founder of an amazing school, all-girls school, Ivy Preparatory Academy, founded in 2008. We opened with 150, 10-year-old, 11-year-old girls. When I transitioned, we had over 1,500 students across 3 schools, coming from several metro Atlanta districts and counties. While I would love to say that my journey as a charter school founder and leader was an uneventful or easy one, it was far from that. And I would say maybe 80% of our challenges had a lot to do with either a hostile authorizer or inconsistent, in some cases, non-existent authorizing policies, weak practices at the authorizing level, or a new authorizer who was just coming on the scene because of policies that allowed them to open as a new or statewide authorizer. HBCUs kind of inherently have a long track record of institutional effectiveness and oversight, with responsibilities like managing effective governance, the fiscal health, curriculum, student enrollment and retention, making sure that there's a robust completion rates and recruitment efforts. And these are all areas that charter schools are held accountable for. So, the work of an authorizer is certainly in the wheelhouse of an HBCU, and allowing HBCUs to participate in the authorizing process would definitely, I think, increase not only the number of Black-led charter schools, founded and led charter schools, but also ensure that proper, effective, consistent, strong oversight at the authorizer level is in place. So yes, it's a great opportunity. That's a win-win for both our universities, our communities, and aspiring and current charter school founders.
Dr. Roush, go ahead.
Going to say, I just wanted to follow up on a couple of things that I heard. And one is many of you have seen, some of the evidence on charter school effectiveness. That's been, really positive and improving, especially for lower income students, Black students, brown students. So much so that we're talking about, 20, 30, sometimes 40 days of additional instruction that students are getting, in charter schools. The reason why it's probably not higher is because of the inconsistency that we see in the authorizing space. And I don't want for us to, shy away that there are some authorizers in the country that do this work exceptionally well, and there are others that are just not good at it. And there are many that are getting a lot better and have demonstrated the capacity to grow and to build. And so that's also why it's really important, as I said earlier on, this is a strategy that makes a ton of sense for more excellent educational opportunities for kids and families. And we want to make sure that the experiences Dr. Gilbert, right, and others have had, it's easier for great school leaders to do amazing work, and acknowledging the important role that authorizing can play, whether that is like an HBCU becoming an authorizer or their alumni getting involved in the authorizing process, right, or other right kinds of ways. But wanted to just acknowledge that we don't need more mediocre or crappy schools, and we don't need more institutions that aren't in this for reasons that can accelerate academic achievement and student wellness. What we need right now are institutions and people that understand what it takes for all of our kids to be successful, step up to the plate and use that capital, for those purposes. And that includes state policymakers to make sure that we've got some pathways for those things to happen.
And can I add something? Can I add something to this? It just brought to mind that HBCUs have the credibility that I think would allow those folks who are a little uncomfortable with the notion of charter schools coming into their communities. It would create a sense of trust, I believe, if there were more HBCUs or HBCUs were more involved in the process of community organizing, educating the community about what a charter school is or is not. We are a repository of research and scholarship so that we can make sure that the record is accurate and right, and properly vet those folks who would come into our communities and lead schools that have traditionally been led and supported and loved by the folks who are from the community. I do think that having HBCUs as charter school authorizers would help to kind of eliminate some of the divisive rhetoric and politics and myths and misconceptions that exist about what school choice is, what a charter school is or is not. Yeah, and bring some of the work and the conversations back into the communities where they belong.
No, thank you both for making those points. I think both of you are making extremely important points around, again, what parents deserve, what families deserve. But also, I think for me, it's also, and we talk about this in the paper, which is access. And so in a state like Georgia, where you have metro centers like Atlanta, but you also have pretty rural areas, like the ones my mom and family come from, in places like Southwest Georgia. And the idea that an HBCU authorizer could authorize and hold accountable and direct resources to schools throughout the state of Georgia and communities that aren't necessarily as strong feeders to a lot of the schools, particularly in the Atlanta University Center, that this could be a way to do so. You're giving quality school options to parents and families throughout the entire state, so don't have to move to Atlanta metro area to attend a school like yours, Dr. Gilbert. That you could have an IB prep in a rural part of the state is one that I think for parents outside of the Atlanta metro area could be a benefit. I do want to touch on our second point, and the second way that the report outlines how HBCUs can impact the future, which is what we're calling building on educational legacies. And you do so by deepening connections with local communities. And so, Dr. Rausch, in what ways do you envision HBCUs deepening connections with local leaders and institutions? And what impact could those connections have on them being an effective charter authorizer?
Yeah, I'll be brief because this feels like this is a perfect question for Dr. Gilbert and Dr. Edney. But it does strike me that the long history of community engagement and deep relationships that HBCUs have with communities that sometimes are often forgotten is a really important asset to listening and building opportunities that communities are looking for. And that's really important for kind of the future of public education options, including charter schools, is really making sure that we're building opportunities that amplify what communities are telling us they're looking for, and making sure that we're listening and connected really well, which HBCUs have been doing for generations.
No, thank you again, Dr. Edney. Your institution, you're doing the work. In what ways is your school connecting with local communities, organizations? I know you're a member of a Divine Nine organization as well. What is your school doing to connect with local community institutions, organizations, and leaders in Delaware?
And as was just mentioned, I mean, HBCUs are kind of rooted in like that faith and family and service. We want our students to be knee deep in all of that, and so we really try to connect with the community around the school itself. But one thing people may not know about our schools, um, we actually take students from the entire state of Delaware in our school and transport them every single day using hub stops. So we bring the community of, which is the entire state of Delaware, right down to Dover, Delaware. Everybody can get to Dover, Delaware within an hour, hour and 15 minutes if you're top to bottom in the state. So some of our students ride the bus for that long. But we make sure that we engage with all of the community groups. Delaware State University is a huge community in and of itself. So there are so many legs to them. We have internship opportunities. We have, our students being able to work with one of the science professors in some concept and connecting our teachers with the professors as well, so that our students can be able to experience that. Just a couple of days ago, we had our medical students be able to go see the white coat ceremony that was held at the university. And in another month, we're going to have a level up day where the government's coming to show you how great it is to work in public service. And so our students are going to be a part of that. But we have other groups that we work with. Girls Incorporated comes and they come every day and do a leadership development after school program with some of our students. The National Organization for Black Law Enforcement come and work with our students, who we want to make sure that our relationships with the policing community are good and that they start at a younger level. And so they come and work with our students and take them on field trips and show them all aspects of policing. We have local banks come and do personal finance workshops and professional developments with our students as well. So, and my brothers of Phi Beta Sigma, I am a Zeta, they adopted our school. The local chapter just adopted our school for the year, and they have been just, whatever we need help with somebody with mentoring. They come and they help and they mentor. They give monetary donations. They donate their time. They come to all of our events. I mean, they've wrapped themselves around our school, and any one of us, there's a divine 9-person working in our building throughout. We have somebody from one of the groups in there, and so each of us have that community to reach out to kind of work with our students as well. So the community is the entire state of Delaware, and we make sure that but the one key piece in that is Delaware State University. And because of who they are and in the community, people want to work with our students and help our students as well. So I believe the impact of being on the campus is very helpful in that sense.
Outstanding. And I will just re-highlight what you said previously, that connection to the Delaware State Alumni Association and alumni in the state, throughout the state, connecting to the school is incredibly important. The third way our paper, highlights what HBCUs can do is what we're calling strengthening ties between K-12 and higher education. And that's by developing unique partnerships with schools they authorize, providing access to higher education campuses like Delaware State, creating pipelines of new students and opportunities for dual enrollment, mentorship programs between schools and students, and research opportunities between faculties and schools, like we saw in the past around lab schools, HBCU lab schools, that we also highlighted in the paper from schools like FAMU and Southern University. And so, Dr. Gilbert, how could an HBCU like Morehouse, authorizing schools throughout Georgia, what could that mean for your students as mentors, as researchers, but also as a pipeline of students from more rural areas of Georgia into Morehouse?
Certainly. So first of all, it creates a path or pathway that goes in both directions, right? So our faculty would be able to partner with or collaborate with the faculties and the communities of some of these schools that could be authorized by our institution, but it also makes our institution more accessible to students who otherwise would not have access. you have Atlanta, then you have other city centers like, your Augusta, Columbus, Savannah, Macon, but then you have other mid-sized, cities and towns in between those cities where the school districts are much smaller than, those in Metro Atlanta, but large enough that students need options beyond the regional, colleges and universities in those areas. And we might not have as many Morehouse alum serving in some of those smaller or rural districts. So giving those students access and visibility and more awareness of our campus would be important. And I think about some of our most prominent alum who, were from some of these smaller towns. And I'm so proud to acknowledge one of our most esteemed and iconic alum, Dr. Otis Moss Jr., is from LaGrange, Georgia, which is also my hometown. And it's approximately 65 miles south of the city. And while not considered really a metro Atlanta school district or town, it's certainly close enough that our schools, our institution should be working more closely with this district, but it's not. The students from LaGrange, like a Dr. Moss, should be, heavily recruited or having their counselors arrange visits to our campus. They are not. So I think that by having this opportunity to authorize and partner and work with schools beyond the metro area would certainly help increase not only, the diversity, the geographic diversity that we, currently have, but also allow our faculty to kind of lift up our one of our strategic priorities, which is like Morehouse Beyond Borders, which allows us to do the work outside of or beyond our campus and in the community, but beyond also our region.
Thank you so much. In the time we have left, I do want to go back to the audience. We have a question for you. We're going to touch on this topic in a second, but I want to get your perspective on this. Creating schools, charter schools, does give charter school leaders a lot of power around how resources are allocated in the school and outside of the community. And so I'm going to ask my colleague to put up a survey question. And this is for those who are listening that may have a service that you provide, a business that you created that could potentially be an asset or a resource to a charter school network that's authorized by an HBCU. So the question is, do you have a business, an invention, a service, a skill that could benefit a K-12 school, like professional development training, curriculum, catering, transportation, building maintenance, landscaping? Do you have a business that could potentially be a vendor to a HBCU authorized charter school? I'll give my own personal testimony. My family were co-founders of a Rosenwald school, which is what we also highlight in the paper. But from that school in a very rural community to this day does not have a traffic light. Economy was created around these schools. My great uncle Willie Valentine started a bus company, and his sons drove the bus. And from that bus company, he's able to send 9 of his children to college. From that very same school, my great aunt Lorraine started, who was the lunch providing lunches to the school, eventually started her own restaurant. And so there is a history, particularly of African Americans, who are supporting these small rural schools to use the resources generated to create small businesses and to close issues we talk about around this Black economic gap. And so, Kareem, I want to come to you for our sort of the last point in the paper, which is this idea that HBCUs as authorizers can create strong community institutions and, wait for it, wealth by understanding the potential in new charter schools, creating new facilities and jobs, opportunities for economic growth in the community, such as Black vendors who can provide new charter schools with products and services. And so, Kariga, what roles do other higher education authorizers that you studied and support play in directing economic development for vendors, but also for institutions themselves? Like, what financial benefits come to higher education authorizers?
Yeah, no, appreciate the question. I think the best way of answering that is that high quality charter schools open up new opportunities for new and different kinds of people to engage in the process of making sure that kids and families have a great education. What makes some kind of individual charter schools different than other kinds of ways in which we've organized teaching and learning is their ability to have the freedom and flexibility on how they spend their resources. And so you can imagine, right, an individual charter school has to engage in partnerships, for everything from, if you got a leaky roof to who your food service vendor is, to what kind of transportation you provide, all those things. They engage, different kind of folks. So we think it could be a good opportunity for new folks that are looking that can provide really strong services for schools to unlock those kind of opportunities. I do want to also make another important point, right? And that's as we're talking about, kind of money and institutional wealth and those kind of things. Authorizers aren't making money, on this work. Want to make sure that, right, that's really clear, right? The resources they have to do the work well is to provide the right kind of oversight and the right kind of, work, to operate in that space. And that's because, right, the work of authorizing is really hard. And it's really hard to do well. And that's why it takes professional expertise, institutional commitment, and a lot of other really important ways in which this can work well, so that there are new opportunities that are unlocked, for kids, families, and communities. So I want to make sure that we're clear that we think the opportunities for building wealth is really through the unlocking of opportunities around who schools may kind of engage. Authorizers aren't making money on this work by making money, right? And kind of probably they should have sufficient resources to do their work well, but it's really the power of freeing up folks to make good, thoughtful choices and decisions around how they can create schools that work great for kids and families.
I think you're making both those points, particularly the point that for HBCU leaders who are considering this, that there are resources to stand up an office and an authorizer to show that you're not pulling money out of your coffers and your endowments to set up an office. But to your point, this is not a cash cow for schools. It's mission driven, but one which does come with resources to do the work. I think to your point. Dr. Gilbert, you have led a school, but also have been a vendor to other schools in the work that you do. What's the difference between becoming a vendor or a charter school hiring a vendor compared to, say, a traditional public school system?
And just so I want to clarify, you mean the difference in providing some type of service, the difference in providing a service to a charter school versus a traditional public district school. Yeah. So, as a former, charter leader, I definitely understand, recognize, empathize with the charter school leader who has a limited budget, limited resources, and in some cases, a lack of knowledge, or the breadth of knowledge is not as deep or expanse as the one who may lead a traditional district school. And so, the approach that I would use if coming in as a vendor, certainly, doing some type of discovery session to assess needs, and understanding that charter schools, well-run charter schools, have the ability to pivot. This is a distinction. They can pivot easier in a crisis or to avoid a crisis. And so working with a school leader who might need support to make sure they are either increasing their whatever, progress they're making, improving on that, or avoiding any type of pitfall is always important. With a district, the resources that exist are significantly more, but their ability to pivot is more difficult. It's like a cruise ship pivoting to avoid a crisis or a problem versus a sailboat, right? So sometimes working with a district client or partner, there's so much red tape, so much bureaucracy. And a lot of, well, I would say with both entities, a lot of their priorities are compliance driven. However, I will say with charter school clients, when I'm working with them, it is more mission heavy, wanting to make sure that the mission of the school remains a priority, the culture of the school remain a priority, the morale and the engagement of families remain a priority versus some of my more well-resourced large district clients or partners who are really trying to maintain their kind of compliance priorities. Those are probably some of the most significant differences and similarities.
Thank you. Before I come to you, Dr. Edney, I do want to see the results of our poll to see how many of you have something. 73% of you have a service that could potentially be provided to a charter school. And so just think on that, particularly those of you who are minorities, women-led institutions that are often marginalized in accessing resources. Just please understand the power of that. Dr. Edney, I do want to come to you, particularly as a school leader. How could this particular idea of growth of HBCUs and authorizers, how could your model be expanded through an authorizer? What impact could that have throughout the state of Delaware in building wealth for particularly Delaware State alums and or members of D9, particularly in your state?
I think, expanding the model makes perfect sense to do in any HBCU. If we were able to expand our program either, and we just recently expanded actually. Last year I added on a 7th and an 8th grade. We really needed to start the college going culture a little earlier. There are people who are coming after me. Come on, we need you to do an elementary school too. I'm not quite ready for that yet, but I can handle the 7 through 12 right now. But we wanted to start that college going culture so that we could build that stronger student, so that that stronger student can do well at the university level while they're at a younger age, and then leave us, hopefully go straight to Delaware State University, and then become that pipeline that's there for them. We are part of a great time at DSU where they are at the highest enrollment they've ever had, and we're excited that our direct graduates are a big part of that. And if we were able to expand in Delaware, I think that it would make the program even, more rich. You look at a student being able to start life debt-free because they were able to go through high school and take college classes in that wasted time that seems to be there in a lot of high schools. So you've got, 32 opportunities to earn 24 credits. And, you've got that time frame in the junior and senior year in particular that you could use to have students actually taking college courses, which takes off time, in their actual bachelor's degree. When they come in to do that, then the students will be finished a lot sooner and may be able to do more schooling or be able to, go straight to work. I look at my valedictorian from last year, Mariana Cabasso. She was 16 years old when she graduated from us. She was young to begin with. She graduated with 71 college credits, and she wants to become a doctor. And where did she decide to go finish her bachelor's degree? Well, Delaware State University, because that makes the most sense. She finishes there. She'll be done next year in December. And then she's going off to whatever medical school there's going to be. And she's done all of this for free because she was able to do it in our school for free. And then she was able to go to Delaware State University receiving a presidential scholarship, which pays for everything. She doesn't have to pay for anything and continue that free. That kind of wealth within a student, being able to start their college career or after their college career or go into a medical school be debt free at that moment will just change generations to come for that family, that community that student lives in. And and being able to be a part of that, HBCUs could be right at the center of that. And that's why I kind of believe in the model and believe that it can be replicated anywhere.
Thank you so much. That's a great place to end today's discussion. I want to thank my panelists, Dr. Gilbert, Dr. Roush, Dr. Edney. I think I'm going back to get a doctorate too. I feel kind of left out over here, all these smart, intelligent folks. And so what's the next step for you all as listeners? We've added the link to the paper in the chat for you all to download. Please read the paper, contact myself at PPI, contact Dr. Roush at NACSA. Engage with us on this idea. We're going to continue to come back to you with experts from HBCUs and state legislators and partners who are really excited about this. Myself and my sister Naomi are really going to be creating a podcast series on this particular topic as well. One of our first guests is going to be Dr. Roush. So we're going to continue to have this conversation. Please contact us so we can engage on this, so we can provide families throughout this country with the same opportunities that everyone else has, and using the examples and history of HBCUs to do so. Again, thank you all so much for joining us today. Have a great day.
Thank you.